And what is Guru or who is Guru? The conscience within you is the Guru. The one that guides you. The one that enlightens you. As such, there is a Guru in everybody.
Guru Om, Guru Om, Satya Guru, Guru Om, Guru Om, Guru Om, Prema Guru, Guru
When I lived I grew up in the Midwest, which some of you are familiar with, because I know some of you are from the U.S. or have traveled a lot in the world. And it's actually, looking back, I'm very appreciative where I grew up, because I can always tell somebody from the Midwest, they're solid, they're honest, they don't have a lot of frills, and they say what they mean, and they mean what they say. Where California, they don't often say what they mean, and they don't mean what they say. They talk in frilliness. They talk in lots of conversation that doesn't have much depth. And also living in New York now, too, having our center there, I love them because they're very sound people, but very fast people. So the Midwest, was raised in a farming community, where things were much slower in the 40s and, of course, in the 50s. And then the revolution came for us in our spiritual revolution with the hippie movement in the 60s, which I know you experienced because I still meet old hippies mostly in Rishikesh. And I know that the movement was a renaissance. It was a renaissance for change. It was a renaissance that we cannot live in the same patterning and the same values that our parents laid down for us, because they're not based on truth. They're based on prejudice, they're based on discrimination, they're based on money is the most important thing, material wealth is the most important thing. In looking back, I understand totally why they were of that nature, because of all the wars and all the depression and all the having not that they experienced growing up. But I also understand now why I reincarnated back at the time I did in 1943, so that I could have a remembrance in my genetic coding of a most brutal war and a most hard depression for people who base their lives on materialism, and then the longing for materialism that equated security. Security from what? Most people want security because they think maybe they won't die then, because they don't have any preparation for that last breath. So I understand it all. I understand why I had the parents I had. I'm most appreciative now. But at the time, I was not appreciative at all. I did not like them. I did not like America. I did not like anything that America stood for. And I was just going to get the heck out of there. Well, getting the heck out of there at the time was going to Hawaii. Now, Hawaii was still a part of America, but it was really the newest part. They had joined the Hawaiian Islands the very last. And the Hawaiian Islands stood alone in the 60s. They weren't like America. They had two-lane highways. The natives were Hawaiians or Filipinos or island people. And they had a whole nother philosophy. They had a whole nother religion. They had a whole nother relationship to the earth and to materialism than we had growing up in the Midwest. Going to university was not very important for them. Earning a great deal of money was not important for them. It was enjoying the life, enjoying the sunrises and the sunsets, eating the fruits and the native crop off the land. And they were very much more at peace, you might say, than the rest of the United States was. And that was the peace I was looking for. I was looking for a way of life that made sense, that was tied into the earth and tied into God. So I lived there for a number of years, but I started depending wholly on the weather. My life spun around how high the waves were for body surfing. My life spun around to when the mangoes were ripe and when the avocados were ripe, and how easy the life could be. I dedicated my life to easiness and not hard. In fact, we had a way that we greeted everybody. We greeted them with just putting our palm to palm and sliding it like this and saying easy. That was the way the hippies and that we greeted each other, was easy, like life was easy. We were to surf, body surf, board surf. We would eat the fruits, hang out, do a lot of drugs, and just have an easy life. We call that paradise, or we call that the perfect life. And so I lived the quote, unquote, perfect life with no commitment, no hard work, allergic to work, not letting money be part of my life, even though we took other people's fruits and we did things to get by that had no work affiliated or no trade affiliated with them. We lived on a free beach and we just rode the waves of life. I had grown up where we worked very, very hard. We had little money, and that was a boon when I look back because I grew up very healthy. We didn't have hardly any meat. We only got 1 glass of milk a day. And we didn't get any dairy because it cost too much. But what we did get was lots of fruits and lots of vegetables that we grew in the garden and then put up as a crop for the winter months. So, and my father in the 40s and 50s grew organic, even though at that time no one knew. He subscribed to a magazine I remember called Organic Gardening in the 40s. And so we didn't spray the plants, and as a result, we're now at the ages of 66, 68, 70, 72 are the 4 children. And knock on God's wood, each one of us is very sound and very healthy and very happy. And I know a lot of it was our upbringing. My mother came from Sicily, and she came on a boat when she was young. My father was very hardworking, and they taught us values. But I needed to rebel totally against values of working hard and of earning my way and really basically of helping people. And that was their principle. But I couldn't agree with it until I had experienced the other side, of which I did. Time went on, and one day I was actually about 25 years old, and I said, this is it. This is life, body surfing every day, just gathering fruit, hanging out, wondering what's going on, following maybe a rock festival to a bigger island, just fooling around all the time, but having fun. But is this it? And time gave me some hard crunches, some scary crunches, some frightening things happened to me that made me know I was being answered that question. And as a result, I went and joined a Zendo, which is a Zen Buddhist monastery in the mountains of Maui. And I went from no schedule, no timeline, no responsibilities, no discipline, to 6 to 8 hours of meditating a day. I didn't know what meditation was. I knew inside on some genetic coding what it was, of course, or just to sit against a wall and stare, and being given really no big breath technique as we get in Kundalini Yoga, and really no mantra or mudra, but just sitting still. And I did it for almost 2 years, sometimes up to 11 hours a day for 10 days in a row, sometimes fasting, and sometimes doing just a lot of austere acts, and also working in between in the kitchen and in the fields, because it was self-sustainable ashram. I decided the only way I could live in the world, I couldn't return to the world and join it in a business way or in any kind of way. All I knew was acting and taking care of children and cleaning houses. That's the only skills I had. So I decided the only way I would fit into the world is to become a Zen nun and move to Japan. Pretty drastic, right? Maybe some of you have gone that route. The only way I could do it is to become a renunciate, a sadhu, a nun. But I was very earnest in it, because I thought if I did that, it would give me boundaries and borders. I could serve, I could meditate, and I would live in a little world that would be safe. Because I wasn't sure of me. I wasn't sure that I wouldn't go back to drugs. I wouldn't go back to alcohol. I wouldn't go back to my old ways of just anything goes. So I thought, that's the only way I'm going to keep myself safe, in a sense. So I was preparing to go to Japan to live in Kamakura with a Roshi, with an enlightened man who I'd met, who said, come. You can teach English and you can pay your way in that way and train to become a nun. So my Christian background, I told my parents, my father had passed, but it was just another thing I was going to do. I told my mother so many things I was going to do, and this one was really out there. You know, I'm going to become a Zen nun. She had no idea what a Zen was, let alone being a Zen nun. So I got back to the mainland, and I was in Big Sur, California, where I always hung out when I was back and forth. And a friend of mine who was 21 years old, it was his birthday, and he asked me to stay after his birthday party. Now this young man had never done drugs. His father was the minister of the Unitarian Church there, the only church in the area. He was from Sweden, and he was seemingly very straight guy. Wore those button-down shirts and those black and white shoes, and had short blonde hair and big black rimmed glasses. I think he was more like a nerd. He never fit in. He was just always an oddball. But I loved this fellow so much because he was so odd, and I was so odd. I was somebody who didn't where I had hair like his except about down to here. And my skin was very, very dark from just living on the beach all those years. And I only owned one dress because that's all I said to own was a dress. And I would wash it, dry it, put it back on. And I had a toothbrush. That was it. We were just really not into possessions, not into money, and on and on and on. We were fanatics in a sense. I think I had some shoes. I'm not sure. So he said, sit down. He was a very bossy fellow, and he had a very, very low voice like this, an unduly low voice for a 21-year-old. And he said, sit. He made me stay after the birthday party. And I sat on a couch like this, and I remember I started bowing like this, up and down. I don't remember how long. And I think the mantra was Waheguru, like you did yesterday. I don't remember. It was 43 years ago. And then he said, I've been told to take you in 3 days to Arizona. I didn't even ask him who told him. And I really had nothing to do because I hadn't saved any money to go to Japan yet. I had to clean houses to get the fare to Japan. So I said, okay. And we left. He had a white Volkswagen Bug, a white German Shepherd, and he had white hair. So we headed down the coast of California, down Highway 1 to Arizona. On the way, he said, I haven't been told if it's Tucson or Phoenix. Again, I didn't ask him who was he talking to, but I started noticing weird things because he would kind of be talking and he wasn't talking to me. So I realized he must have some psychic abilities or have somebody talking to him. But I was always fascinated with people that were kind of nutty, because I was so nutty myself that I just felt like we really belonged together. We were not intimate, nothing like that, just totally platonic. And again, he had never taken LSD or never taken drugs, so he was just straight, never drank. He was straight as straight could be. And we crossed the border, and he said we're to go to Tucson. Okay, sounds good. I've never been to Arizona. And it's hot and deserty like this very much. And so we pulled up on 9th Street to an old house. And he says, this is the ashram. You're to live in this ashram. So we walked into it, and I remember getting a feeling that I never had before in my life. And I really felt, like many of you, when you found your path, I said, I felt like I came home. And that was the first ashram, and it was Yogi Bhajan's ashram. And so Marky J, that's what we call it Mark Johnson, he stayed for 7 days. He paid my first month's room and board, which was 75 American dollars, not much. And he meditated for 7 days, and then he left. And I've never seen him since. So these are the kind of things that have happened my whole life. The different messengers have come. Maybe they've come in the form of an owl, maybe in the form of an animal, maybe a voice of a person I didn't even know and never saw again. But they're all there for all of us, and I know many of you have stories you could tell of the same nature. And they're all waiting to give you the next message. I get a lot of messages in the wind. The wind has a voice inside of it that will tell you, but the big secret is to listen. Because if our minds are so busy, they have no room for any listening. And I think because I took so many drugs, I didn't really have a very prominent mind at the time. I think perhaps I was more connected with intuition or something beyond the mind, because I'd almost burnt my mind out. I regained it, not all of it, but a large part of it, through Kondolini Yoga. So when I started doing my sadhana, and that time sadhana was at 2 in the morning, Yogi Bhajan realized when he came in 1969 that there were so many people, so many of us hippies, who were longing to belong to something. And we were in a wasteland, like a T.S. Eliot wasteland, waiting for something to come. Meanwhile, we were experiencing God profoundly, but through a drug. We were experiencing the oneness, but through a drug. And you could only get that oneness on the outside of you long enough. You can get the experience, but if it becomes your only way you can source the oneness with Creator, then it becomes a habit and you could never get it from inside. So we had the call to come, to help us out. And he did help us out. He took a whole nation of young people, such as myself, and I was pretty old. I found him at 26. Many people found him at 14 years old, 18 years old, 20 years old. And we came unto these teachings. He said, don't come to me. Come to the teachings. Don't bow to anyone anymore. Take that word guru out of your vocabulary of an earthly being. You are your own guru. You are your own teacher. And that's the Aquarian age. The Piscean is, tell me, what's the answer? Is there a God? Guru says, there's a God. Then you come back, there's a God, but you're only a parrot to somebody else's truth. He said, I came to give you the technology that will give you the experience, so you can say there is a God. Because we travel more than we're at home, last year about 265 days a year, we zoom into many communities, such as this beautiful community in Israel, to the Russian community, the Italian community, the da-da-da-da-da, so many communities. And my prayer for all of you that are teachers is to join together. I can feel a tremor almost inside of me when I travel and I find that there's differences amongst communities, and we have started to compete and to compare that which Yogi Bhajan never wanted to have happen. And he started it as a master teacher by saying, don't bow to me, don't love me, you can love me, you can hate me, I don't care. I'm the mailman. I'm delivering you a technology so you can deliver yourself to yourself. I claim no credit for these teachings, and I did not come to gather students. I came to create teachers so that all could be liberated by this incredible technology that he said would not even be understood for 500 years. It's so out there. That's why it's the least known school of yoga on planet Earth, even though there's many, many more of us that are coming its way. Why? Because you have to go in so deep that not everybody's ready to do that yet. And that's okay. We're not out to proselytize. We're not out to say you got to do it. When the time is right, the teacher will come. And many of you have gone through many schools of yoga, and then you have the experience of Kundalini, and maybe you would never have had it if you hadn't done all the different levels and layers of yoga, meditation, whatever your studies are. Also, the beauty of Kundalini is you can couple it with anything else. If you're a Kabbalah student, if you're a devout Orthodox Jewish person, if you're a devout Catholic, if you're a Muslim, it doesn't matter. If you don't even believe in God, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. It doesn't matter if you're gay. It doesn't matter if you're a transvestite. It doesn't matter how old you are. Nothing matters like that. Because Kundalini gives you essence of self. Sometimes you change. Sometimes you were of an orthodox nature and you decide to maybe lean over a little more. Sometimes you want to lean more. It doesn't matter. Yoga, Kundalini Yoga is not a religion. It helps you to develop your way of life, which is basically your destiny. It helps you to see your destiny, and then it gives you the tools to live your destiny. And that really is what the life's all about. And you can get to a point in your life that you don't have to wonder, why am I here? What am I doing? What's it all about? What's my life work? And on and on and on. You really come to know it through this technology. So it's a technology and it's a science. 2 and 2, I can't say forever, but 2 and 2 right now is 4. And that's how Kundalini works. It's a science. If you do it, your experience and your experience and your experience, you may have totally different stories to tell after we finish at noon today. Because you all have a different destiny, you all have a different history, but what's coming up is a revelation that you will have, and it's yours. It's in your heart. And we never ever tire of doing Kundalini Yoga. It's never the same old thing, because Yogi Bhajan never taught the same thing twice. So our prayer today, deserts are purification. That's why Moses was 40 years. That's why Jesus was 40 days. That's why many sannyasis, many of renunciates of every single faith, where do they go? They go to a desert and they go to a cave to remove themselves from the world so they can go into inner self. And when I came on this incredible journey yesterday from Tel Aviv, it was really quite something. Maybe we should let the wind be our teacher. And I think if we spend this valuable days together, so much is going to be revealed for you personally. I suggest if you journal, and in the afternoon when we take a quite a significant break, probably from lunch till 4:30 or 5, I haven't quite sized it up yet. Take this time to either walk, sleep, use her land, use her beauty to give you messages. Birds give you messages. Wind gives you messages. A flower can give you a message. And does it come in words sometimes? Does it come in color? Sometimes does it come in feelings? Does it come in smell sometimes? We have one meditation that Yogi Bhajan taught us, and he said, we'll do it this afternoon. He said, when you finish this meditation, you will smell a rose, even though there's no rose inside. And that's what happens often. We get it, but we don't know how to trust those messages. So sometimes our mind even blocks them out. It says, oh, that's crazy. What a crazy thought you have. That will never work. You'll never do like this. But if we can get clear through this whole frontal lobe, then we live totally by the messages. You don't even live with thinking anymore. You use intuition. I got the message to do this. I got the message to do that. It came through very clear. And you start trusting this new road, this new path, till finally you start walking that path. Once in a while the mind will come in, the old mind. Oh, you're stupid. It'll never work. You don't have enough money. That's crazy. Don't do that. But it'll be so out there that you barely hear it. I hear you, but I'm not going to act on you. And then you walk. And then all your big questions that maybe you've had in the past, they just lay at rest because you're able to live. There's an old poem I love of Rumi's. He says, sit in the middle of your question. Just sit in the middle of it. Don't try to solve it. Don't try to come up with an answer with it. Don't be perplexed or confused or angry. Just sit. Meaning meditate. Just sit like you're in the middle of a lotus flower. Just sit in it. The middle of the question. Not even looking for the answer. Just sit in the celebration of the question. He says, someday soon, you'll be outside and you'll look back. You'll be living the answer. And you'll remember when you sat in the middle with the question. Only if you can do it, knowing the answer's there, but it's not yours to know right now. That's why it's really honest to say, if somebody wants to know, or you're supposed to know, whatever it is, you say, the answer has not come yet. Because if you try to manufacture an answer, it comes from your ego. And ego is not based on truth. And it's all a matter of God's timing when the answers come. It's like when you're babies, when you're pregnant with a baby. A doctor wants to give a due date. Due dates are so fictitious. They're just made up. It's like you in power over Creator. Your baby has to be born at a certain time and a certain date and a certain place, because that's destiny. And it's best to say, when we teach pregnancy teachers training, we train the mamas to say, people say, when your baby due? And then Sunday, oh, the 4th of July. Then the 4th of July comes and the baby's not there, and then people call, oh, your baby's, oh, what's wrong? Everyone thinks now you're circled by a whole aura of what's wrong. The baby's late. What's wrong? Are you gonna bring the baby on? Is that all this stuff? Better to say, I'm 37 weeks, or I'm whatever the week is. We even have some mamas who, one time, her daughter was born late. The parents, quote, unquote, the parents were so disturbed and the in-laws were so disturbed, and her friends who are not knowledgeable that there's no such thing as a due date, they made such a fuss about it that their second baby, they said the baby was due a month later. And then no one fussed. And so, but that's like life. When we are being birthed into our next chapter, our next phase, our next step in consciousness, it's God's business. It really is. It's destiny's business. If you just show up and just do your daily practice, do your sadhana, do your prayers, whatever you can do, it will unfold in such a magical way. When you look back at your life now, was it every single thing you planned it to be? Can anyone say that? No. Because there's a bigger... Who made us? Who divided our cells? Who gave us the first breath? How can we think we know anything? And yet the mind tells us, be in control. Know what you're going to do. I remember I had an uncle, God bless his soul, and he's another subject of someone who went to war and went through every single thing, that he was hanging on tight for security. I remember he cornered me in the kitchen when I was in 7th grade, demanding at that time that I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. He said, you have to know now, you have to make a plan, you have to plan for the college. It was such a messenger from God to say, no way. And I really went the opposite. And I watched poor children follow in suit with him to the most unhappy, actually almost tragic lives. So, does it mean you don't know how to pay your rent or your mortgage, or your car falls apart because you didn't take it to the garage? No. You let earth plane take care of itself, but at the same time, you can do it through not worry, not stress, but trust. Trust is something beyond the intellect. You can live so well and so gracefully through intuition, and that's a promise. So that's what we're going to work on today. We're going to work on trusting that inner voice, trusting however that inner voice comes. Really learning to make it become your lifestyle. Make it become, and to be not afraid to say, I don't know yet, the answer hasn't come, to your children, to the situation at hand, to buy a house, to sell a house, to leave a man, to start a new relationship. If it isn't coming through where you can say totally yes, then it isn't yours to know yet. I'll close. Is it on now?
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me? Mm-hmm. Yeah? It needs to go up a little bit. I'll close with a little story just to show you how the possibility of how intuition can work if you listen for it. We were in Colorado and it was snowing, and we were up at a friend's house high in the mountains. And I was doing my sadhana in the early morning. It was real dark and I had candles. And there was a window up above and the snow was coming and the wind was blowing. And the window just flew open. And with the opening and with the sound came buy land. I didn't plan to buy land. I wasn't even interested in buying land. Buy land. Can everyone? Okay, well, everyone can hear. Okay. Buy land. Okay. Well, can you send in another message like where? And it said, just find land from Colorado to New Mexico. It didn't say what for, but I knew it wasn't for me. It was to buy some land. So, my husband has always trusted, and I've trusted his intuition too. So we went on a quest for land. And we went all the way through Colorado, and we actually took a Native American, a very dear friend, Sarah Eaglewoman, and she's a toothsayer. She sees the unseen. And we said, okay, we'll take her. She's of this land. So we traveled. And we went to spiritual communities. We went to different areas. But we all just shook our head. Lovely, but not the land. And as soon as we got to the border of Colorado and New Mexico, we crossed the border, and we all looked at each other and said, yes. And then an eagle flew across. So we found this incredible piece of land, 50 acres. It has, the back is a national forest, and the Santa Barbara is the mountain. And it's got a place you could farm. It's got water. It's got a place where we could actually make little huts for people to meditate, and on and on. But so now the question you were asking, or I was asking, or I'm still asking, what is it for? And it just sits there, and it's been there like for 2 years. So then I was in Vancouver teaching a pregnancy teacher's training, and a good friend said, I have a tarot card reader. She's over in Granville Island, and she's a British, Canadian-British woman who's done tarot for years and years. I want to gift you. Let's go see her. So we got there, and she had her deck of cards, but I knew soon she wasn't using the deck of cards at all. She was just using them like she was using them, but she was taking the information down. And she says, yeah, I asked this morning what was it I was to speak to you about. And I shouldn't know anything about me. And she said, it's about this land. And she says, you'll be told what to do with this land. She said, you need to get white stickies and pink pens and write any idea that comes to you on each one on a separate sticky and put it on a big wall. And then they will be shifted. You'll move one to here like this, and then it will be all told to you, almost like in a road map of how to do it and what it is. And she went on to just say there be so many people, more and more now, who are really lost in their way of life. Some will have their feet on the earth. Some will not. Just some people will come and they'll need to learn to meditate. They may be very successful on the earth plane, but they don't know how to meditate. There may be some that are in touch with the earth, but they don't know something else. In other words, it'll be rediscovering your way of how to walk in this lifetime. And she says people will come who are masters at different things like gardening or building or meditating, and then they will teach others how to do it. So you would come and learn that full circle of life. And so that was the second clue. And she said it will be a 10-year process, but it will happen. Now, she didn't know anything about this land. So you see the magic that awaits us all. And I know many of you, because people from Israel, and I know mostly just women, have the ability to be very, very psychic, very, very intuitive. And if we can cultivate it more and more so that we live in that realm, the men will follow. The men have it in them. They just don't have it quite as much moon energy as we do. But if we lead them, which is the Aquarian age, is the female leading the male energy into this new world.
And when the female leads, there will be no more wars. There will be no more wars, because no woman, whether she's with child or not, would want her sons and want her children to be killed and to kill others. It's against our nature. But if we don't stand up and be that, the men are clueless to that truth, because their innateness is to defend. Their innateness is first chakra, fight or run. So we are the ones that have to rise to the occasion now, throughout this whole world, from Africa to Russia to here, any place where there's war torn. It's the female, the moon. It's we embodied this lifetime in a female body that has to do it. There's no other way. There's no other way. And so, with intuition, we shall find the way, and men will follow, because they're really copycats. They really will. Instead of the way the world's been for 2,000 years, that we follow them. So are we ready? Yeah. Okay. Let's come sitting up.